Hello, today for my project I am doing the history of the bongo drum. I am using sources today from the LA Book Review, Instrument Insider, Encyclopedia Britannica, and a basic bongo rhythm YouTube video by Al Dorsky. So the bongo was first recorded in Cuba in the 1900s, and it is used to play Afro-Cuban style music. Where the bongo originated, however, is largely debated over by historians. Some say that the bongo originated in the Yoruba culture of Nigeria, and others say that it is the bongo originated somewhere in Central Africa because the bongo has a hollow shell. This brings me to how the bongo drums are made. Bongo drums are made with their membranophones, and the head of the drum is made with a tight stretched, usually animal skin. And then the shell of the drum is made out of wood, and again, the shell is hollow. The drums are also two different sizes. The smaller size is about 5 inches across on the head, and then probably 8 inches down in the shell. As you can see, mine are bigger, but we'll get to that in a minute. This smaller drum is called the macho in Spanish, and the bigger drum is called the hembra, which is actually the name for female in Spanish, and macho is the name for male. I just think it's interesting that reverse when we're talking specifically about the bongo drums. The bongos produce a kind of light, really beautiful sound, very rhythmic. Mine are different because they're made of metal, so it does produce a different sound because I am not a woodworker, nor do I have dried, tightened animal skin on hand, nor do I want to pay to get some. So what I did is I took 2 of my brother's cylinder Lincoln log containers, and I took the lids off of this end, and I glued them onto this end. I then covered the lids in white construction paper, and then covered the side of the lid and folded that construction paper up. I then took the cylinder part of the container and covered that in 3 sheets of brown construction paper, so it's covered all the way around. I then glued the bongos together because bongos are always 2 drums that are stuck together. It's never one drum and another drum, they're always stuck together. What I then did is I then drew the grass with Sharpie. I just drew the individual little blades across all around both drums. I then went and printed out the silhouette of several buffalo and cut them out, and you can see the buffalo walking around in the grass. On the top, I just did a simple kind of wave. I started with one end and went a wave, and then on the wave going on the bottom, I just started opposite of that, and to create this really cool but simple wave effect. A lot of traditional African drums do have some designs, and I wanted to bring more than just a lid covered Lincoln log container covered in construction paper. So I did some designs that I thought were creative, but also maybe you could think of as traditional African designs. Buffalo or bison are traditional animals that are found in Africa. And then what I did is covered the silver part of the container. So there's a little lip of the lid that you can kind of see here. I tried to cover that in just brown construction paper to give it a nice clean line, or at least try to, and to give it more of like the traditional bongo drum connecting the shell to the membrane feel. I am not an artist by any means, but I thought I did pretty well. Again, mine sound a little different because they are made of metal. The bongos are used to play different styles of music, including ningon and Cuban son. One of the most notable styles they play is a stylistic, son of Cuban son, and an Afro-Cuban fusion, heavily influenced in America as well, called salsa. I used a YouTube video to learn how to play a basic bongo rhythm, and I'm going to try. One of my downfalls is rhythms, whether that be on the piano or on the guitar or whatever instrument. So I'm going to try. So you start with your 3 fingers, that's called the tone, and you just lightly push, and you start with your pulse. Now, one of these drums would be higher pitched than the other, but since mine are the same size, they're both going to be relatively the same pitch. So I have my pulse, and I just do it with the tips of my fingers. Most bongo drums can hit it with the palm of their hand, and they kind of, bongo players, and they kind of curve their hand up. But you never want to just go flat, like my little brothers might do if I gave them the drums. So I have these pulse, and I have the steady beat. Then on the offbeats, I can add another little tone on the other drum. And then there are many different ways to play the bongo drums. That is just a basic bongo rhythm. And the rhythmic on the salsa dance in America and in Cuba was often frowned upon. In Cuba before the revolution and in North America, people were afraid that slaves that came from Cuba or came from Africa and had the bongo drums would use it to communicate with each other. A lot of slave songs were used to communicate. For example, Wade in the Water was a song that the hunting dogs were coming if you were an escaped slave, and that if you waded in the water, they couldn't catch your scent. They were afraid that the bongo drums could be used between slaves to communicate, and that was very frowned upon. But as is anything that is frowned upon, it eventually became a revolution and very popular. In Cuba, even though rules were more relaxed, bongos were still, again, considered a very taboo instrument and represented immorality and the devil, like much new music, like jazz was. If we think of the hip-hop of the 90s, how that was received. But still, those styles of music become very popular, partly because it was so frowned upon. So people do give it a lot of attention and say, don't listen to it. But what's the first thing you're going to do if someone tells you not to do something or not to listen to something? The first thing you do is go read the book or listen to it, listen to the song. So leaders in Cuba, in 1925, the leader of Cuba, Gerardo Maldonado, was suppressed the use of the drums, especially when they were used in conga lines, because conga lines were considered sexual, and they were considered to be an immoral lifestyle. The mayor of Santiago, Cuba, in 1925, Desiderio Arnaz, said that the conga disrespects society. If you recognize the name Desiderio Arnaz, or at least the name Arnaz, that's because Desiderio had a son named Desi Arnaz, who actually played Ricky on the hit TV show I Love Lucy in the 1950s. As is most frowned upon music, again, it can become quite popular. And when you think of the bongo explosion, when I think of bongos, I think of Jimi Hendrix and the music of the 70s, the kind of disco, but the kind of rhythmic music of the late 60s and 70s. And I think of like the bongos and just the smooth, kind of cool rhythm. Still has a driving, steady beat, but it's not rushed. And I think of the traditional African sounding music and African sounding music within that. And I also think of the song How Do You Know from the movie Ella Enchanted, which does use the bongo drums, and that's probably the first thing I think of when I think of bongos in the modern day. They're used in a lot of music, and most babies, one of their first instruments is bongos that they can bang on. And bongos have become a very popular and very usable and accessible instrument for everybody. Thank you.